Good afternoon, folks. Robert Chappell here, Executive Editor, Madison365, with your daily update for Friday. It's Friday, everybody, December 17th. I have some good news, bad news kind of situation today. But first, I got to tell you that the daily update today is brought to you by Grace, which is founded in 1978. Grace is a nonprofit, community-supported healthcare organization dedicated to providing high-quality care and support to people who are aging, ill, dying, and grieving. With offices in Madison, Janesville, Baraboo, Dodgeville, and now Oconomowoc, Grace serves nearly 1,500 patients and clients across southern Wisconsin every day. And we appreciate all they do for the community, and we appreciate the support of Madison365. Now, let's talk COVID for a minute. We do have let's get to the numbers first, and then we'll talk about Omicron for a second. Because the numbers today are not that bad, actually. In some ways, they're slightly better than they were yesterday, even. The 7-day average of new cases, we're looking at 3,965 new cases just for today. But that actually drops our average down to 3,558. Yesterday, it was over 3,800 for only the second time this year. But today it's at 3,558, which is a significant drop-off. That dropped by 300 almost for the day. So that's like okay news. Also okay news, the percent of positive test rate is 11.6 today. Yesterday we reported it at 11.8, right? And it has been and yesterday's has been revised upward to 12.2. So today's is probably going to be revised upward also. There's kind of a ever since they had that like 2 days where they didn't have any data because they had processing problems, a lot of this data has been kind of updated a day later. I don't know if they're still catching up or if that's just kind of if they're doing it more slowly now or what, but a lot of these numbers are getting revised upward the next day. So this 11.6% is probably actually closer to 12%. That little distinction is not that big of a deal. It's just bad. No, it's not like 11.6 is fine, but 12 is bad. They're both bad, right? 3% is where we want to be. You want all the testing you do, you want 3% or less to come back positive. We're down 11.5, 11.6, maybe closer to 12. Not good at all. But the good news there is that it didn't go up. You know what I mean? It has been drifting downward for the past couple of weeks. The other piece of news that's not terrible, that's where we are now, right? Let's find some news that's not terrible. 1,664 people hospitalized. That's an increase of only 5 since yesterday. That number actually came down for a couple of consecutive days earlier in the week and has gone up a little bit again today, but not significantly. That's only 30 more than a week ago. ICU admissions, 423 right now. That's 13 more than yesterday, but it's 13 fewer than a week ago. So over the course of the last week, the ICU population has actually dropped. Now, that does not, that those marginal differences don't do much good in terms of hospital capacity. There are right now in this entire state of Wisconsin, 44 ICU beds available. That's not very many. 13 intermediate care beds available in the entire state of Wisconsin. 260 medical surgical beds. 379 negative flow isolation beds. Those are the ones where the COVID patients go when they're really highly contagious. Those medical surgical and negative flow isolation beds raw numbers are higher, but those are very, very tiny percentages of how many we should have available, like 2%. Another way to say that is Wisconsin hospitals, as one big entity, right, are at about 98% capacity. There are some hospitals that are working at like 95% capacity, others that are over 100% capacity. And you have people converting offices to patient rooms and stuff like that. So, but as a whole, statewide, we're about 98% capacity, which is very close to being very precarious. And the day before yesterday, it might have been yesterday morning, maybe it was Wednesday afternoon, Governor Evers did use the word field hospital. We've been asking about that and kind of talking about it. There's no money for it, really. And we don't have the federal dollars that allowed us to build that field hospital in Milwaukee last year. Remember that the field hospital, that's kind of a colloquial way to say it, the alternative care facility at the State Fair Park in Milwaukee was built for 500 people. It never had more than 20. Because they finished building it right when things started to improve, right? And the only reason they used it was for people who were getting ready to go home, like people who were in the hospital for a certain period of time and were on the mend and just needed like 2 more days in the hospital. But the hospital needed that bed for those 2 days, so they moved them out into this facility in Milwaukee. We may have to make another one of those, is what the governor is saying. The more immediate need, however, is staffing, and Federal Emergency Management Agency healthcare staff will be in Wisconsin within the next week or two, focused primarily on the Fox Valley and Western Wisconsin regions, sort of Appleton, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac, that area, and then Eau Claire, La Crosse in that area. I kind of like pointing at places in the imaginary map of Wisconsin. So that's where we are COVID-wise. The other number that is bad today, that I'm saving for the end, is the deaths. Remember, these are deaths that actually happened a month ago or more, right? These take a while, take several weeks to get reported into the data. 27 new deaths today. That puts our new death average of deaths reported per day at 28. That means as a month ago, we were seeing about 28 people every day die of COVID. For context, heart disease is the number one killer of people in Wisconsin and basically the entire United States, right? In Wisconsin, the daily death average for heart disease is 31. That's 31 year round. Okay. So most of the year, COVID has been like 12 or 15, which is still a lot, but it's not near heart disease levels. So, but it looks like for the next little bit here, next couple of months, COVID's going to return to that status as number one cause of death in Wisconsin for some period of months, which is not great. Now, let's talk Omicron for a minute. The consensus that I'm hearing, just not that I have any privileged information, but that I'm gleaning from national media, is that Omicron is going to become the dominant strain in the United States within weeks. Delta, you might remember, took about 2 or 3 months, I think, really, to take over, where there's a few cases, and then it was like half the cases, and then it was all the cases. And it's been all the cases for months now. But it did take a couple of months for Delta to overtake Beta, right, in Wisconsin. But it sounds like in the entire United States, Omicron is going to be the dominant strain very quickly, like maybe even by the new year. Now, there is also some data from Europe, some very early data, right? So don't put a big grain of salt with this, but that Omicron, the people with Omicron variant are less likely to be hospitalized, slightly less. They're in small sample sizes in countries that have high vaccination rates. Okay, so it might be that Delta was really hitting hard when people weren't as vaccinated, and therefore they got hospitalized a lot with Delta. And now with Omicron, they're more likely to be vaccinated and therefore more likely not to get hospitalized if they get it. But okay, so there's that grain of salt. But it's also possible that an individual person, like the percentage of people who are hospitalized and the percentage of people who die from Omicron might be a little bit smaller than that of Delta or Beta or Alpha, whatever. However, which sounds like good news, right? The problem is, even if, Christina, I see your question. I'll get your question. It's a great question. I'll get right to it. Even if, however, let's say Omicron is half as severe. If let's say for example, Omicron is half as likely to be hospitalized. But if there are twice as many people who get Omicron, that's the same number of people hospitalized. See what I mean? So the pure number of people who get hospitalized and die might actually go up, even if Omicron is less severe than Delta, just because it's so much more transmissible. They're talking like it's 2 to 3 times more transmissible than Delta. So you need to get vaccinated. Now, this is a terrific question that Christina has. How do they tell which strain you have if you get COVID? There is some PCR testing where you do the Q-tip up like way on the top of your nose and you poke your brain with it, where they can actually see there's enough difference, there's enough mutations between Omicron and the previous strains that they can tell it's Omicron. I don't think this is my understanding, maybe wrong, but my understanding is that the previous variations, they couldn't really tell the difference in the PCR test, but they can tell if you have Omicron or don't. If you don't have Omicron, they can't really tell what other strain it might be. But the way Wisconsin does it, and I'm going to talk about this in a second here, Wisconsin actually sequences the genome of the sample, which takes weeks to do. Right. So if you get a PCR test, not the rapid antigen test, but the PCR test, they can tell pretty quickly whether it's Omicron or not. If it's not, then they can't really tell if it's Delta or not. You can assume it's Delta. If it's not Omicron, it's Delta. Like that's where we are right now. But to confirm that it's Omicron, they take a sample. They take samples of positive tests. They don't take every positive test, but they actually sequence the genome and they look at the DNA. And you can tell by the DNA what strain it is, which doesn't help you as a person because, like, by the time they actually do that, you're done with COVID. That's all. It takes like 2-3 weeks to do. I think at this point, however, I would, if you're positive, you should assume you have Delta because for the past 3 months, 4 months. Literally 100% of when they do that sampling and sequencing, literally 100% have been Delta. So assume you have Delta right now. 2 weeks from now, you should probably assume you have Omicron. Here's the other thing that was a little bit alarming to me. I mentioned that these things take weeks to do. So when we are looking at the variant reports every Thursday, we get a new variant report, right? This Thursday's variant report was actually from the week of November 27th, right? They took the samples from the week of November 27th. They spent the last 3 weeks sequencing those genomes, and they found for that particular week, it was 100%. I'm going to just check this again because I don't think it was complete when I looked yesterday. I should have looked this before I came live, but why would I prepare? Why would I do that? Okay, this is exciting. Breaking some news here for you guys. Yesterday it was 100% Delta, but they added in some data. So this is the week of November 27th, the week after Thanksgiving. 25% of the cases were Omicron. 75% were Delta. The week before that, November 21st, 3% of the cases were Omicron and 97% were Delta. Okay, so I'm going to recap that. The week of November 21st, everybody listen in. And tell all your friends this. There's not a lot of you watching right now because it's a Friday afternoon. Week of November 21st, 3% of the cases were Omicron. Week of November 27th, 25% were Omicron. Now, these are small samples, but so, we're talking about like 24 samples and 6 of them were Omicron. Okay. not a huge number, but 25% of those they sampled. If that is a representative sample, that means there were many thousands of Omicron cases in Wisconsin the week of Thanksgiving, which, by the way, is the week it was discovered in South Africa. Remember that? Remember, it was the weekend of Thanksgiving that South African scientists identified the Omicron variant. What this is telling us is that while it was being discovered in South Africa, there were already thousands of cases in Wisconsin. Okay, let that sink in for a second. It was discovered in South Africa that weekend, or that week, when it was already here in Wisconsin. And we're just learning that now because we are retroactively sequencing the genome of these cases. So that's not terrific news, unless Omicron is like super not severe, right? If it's one of those things that is not as severe, but it is more virulent, and you end up with 10,000 cases every day, but nobody goes to the hospital, that's great. I don't think it's going to happen. Now, we do have a story on the site right now from CNN. There's a specific. I don't like doing this, but we thought we have to share this just because it's one person. Okay, but this person is an expert, right? So you put a little bit of weight in what they say. But this is Michael Osterholm, the director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota. So he knows what he's talking about and probably is not prone to alarmism, but I don't know. Maybe he's an alarmist. I don't know. But he's saying we're just about, this is the quote, we're really just about to experience a viral blizzard. In the next 3 to 8 weeks, we're going to see millions of Americans are going to be infected with this virus, and that will be overlaid on top of Delta, and we're not yet sure exactly how that's going to work out. So if there are millions of cases of Omicron, thousands every day in Wisconsin, maybe tens of thousands every day in Wisconsin, which, by the way, I really think if it is not as severe, I think there will be more cases that go undetected, right? Because there are a lot of us who will get a little sniffle, maybe even do a home test positive at home, and be like, I feel okay. I feel kind of, but not really, really sick. So I'm just going to rest for a couple of days, isolate myself so I don't infect anybody else, but never actually go in to get an official test. So I would imagine there's going to be a lot of undercounting of Omicron cases. That's my guess. We already know there's a lot of undercounting of all the cases anyway, but that might be even a bigger issue. But even if Omicron is slightly less severe, if you have that many more cases, even a smaller percentage is a higher raw number of people in the hospital where we already only have 44 ICU beds available. So I'm a little concerned about this, right? So mask up, get vaccinated. That's the biggest thing you can do is get vaccinated. And be careful out there during your holiday travels. Hang out with vaccinated people. I'll be hanging out with family, but it's all vaccinated people. All right, that is the COVID news. It's not good. I don't mean to scare you. I'm not in the business of trying to scare anybody. That doesn't help me. I don't need the clicks. I don't need the eyeballs. I don't need the alarmism. We're nonprofit, so I don't need to scare you. I just want to try to inform you. Okay, so that's where we are right now. Stick with us. Give me 15 seconds to hear a little message from our friends at Madison College. And then I'll have more news for you, including some very happy news. Get your mind off COVID for a minute. Some very good news for the state and locally here in Madison and in Milwaukee. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
For you, life is all about creating a brighter future. And at Madison College, we can't wait to see what you do. Visit discovermadisoncollege.com and apply yourself today.
All right. Your Wisconsin Badger volleyball team, if you don't know this, you should. It will play on Sunday for the national championship. I'm wrong. They're going to play tomorrow. I don't know why I thought it was Sunday. I was thinking Sunday because I was thinking it was Friday and Sunday before, but it's actually Thursday. Saturday was the Final Four. So they played last night. They beat top seeded Louisville in 5 sets, and they were terrific, and it was amazing. They did not lose a set in the first however many 3 rounds. And in fact, they hadn't lost a set. They won 19 straight sets until the second set last night. They won the first set, lost the second, won the third, lost the fourth, and won the fifth to advance to the national title game against 10th seeded Nebraska. It'll be it's the first time that this group of seniors has made it to the championship game. They've made it to the last 3 Final Fours, but the championship has just been out of reach. So we will be cheering for them. We'll be watching them tomorrow night, 6:30 in Columbus, Ohio. It's on ESPN. Watch it, cheer it. It's awesome. I know nothing about volleyball, by the way, like literally nothing. And I'm that guy who's like, oh, what a dig. That was a great dig. Oh, I can't believe she's hitting 362. I have no idea what that means. But it's really fun to be in it, right? It's fun. All right. So that's Wisconsin Badger volleyball. Oops. Peng He, CEO of the Hmong Institute, longtime community activist, advocate, leader. Just one of those guys that's kind of always around. Anytime you're talking about anything Hmong issues, Asian American stuff, he's like in it somehow. He is running for lieutenant governor on the Democratic side. He will join the race that is currently occupied by Lena Taylor, state senator from Milwaukee, and David Bowen, state assembly representative from Milwaukee. And Representative Sarah Rodriguez also running for lieutenant governor of Wisconsin. They are all vying in the Democratic primary, which will take place in August of next year, to replace Mandela Barnes, who, as you probably know, is running for United States Senate. So that story is there on Madison365.org. We just learned that today, and Dave Dahmer was able to post that for us. Also today, I've got a nice story about this guy down here in the lower right-hand corner here. His name is Jimmy Banks, and he's pictured here at the World Cup in 1990. If you've been a soccer fan for a while, you might recognize some of those faces. Sorry. I'm trying to see who I recognize. Tony Meola, obviously the goalkeeper. Jimmy Banks was the first Wisconsin-born player to play in the World Cup, to play for the men's national team. These two are the first American-born Black players to represent the United States in the World Cup. And there's an effort underway to rename Custer Stadium Jimmy Banks Stadium. Custer is where he went to high school. It's where he played. Why does this keep doing that? I don't know. My slideshow is very, very sensitive, apparently. Jimmy went to high school at Custer in Milwaukee. He went on to play for UW Milwaukee and UW Parkside. And then the United States national team, had 35 appearances with the national team. And then came back to Milwaukee and played for the Milwaukee Wave, and then started the Simbas, which is a youth club in the Central City, specifically really for Black players. He was a coach at Milwaukee School of Engineering for 20 years. He had 3 sons. All of them played. All of them coach. J.C. Banks was the most successful professionally of the 3. He is the middle son, and he played for Fort Madison for a couple of years. He's now in Nashville, coaching and running a soccer facility there. But Jimmy Banks died rather unexpectedly and very young of cancer back in 2019. And there's now a effort underway from his coaching colleagues, admirers, family, and friends to rename that stadium Jimmy Banks Stadium, because that's where he played in the 40 years ago in the 1980s, early to mid 1980s, early 1980s. So that was a really fun story to do. Got to talk to his sons and people who love him, and as well as one of his national team teammates, John Harkes, was a captain of the United States national team in the 90s, was a teammate of Jimmy's, and talked very glowingly of him. So that's a fun story there at Madison365.org this afternoon. Also tonight, the United Migrant UMOS, I can never remember what UMOS stands for. UMOS, United Migrant Opportunity Services. Just can remember what the O stood for. United Migrant Opportunity Services is holding their 40th anniversary Hispanic Awards banquet tonight. It's a virtual event. You can watch it live for free. And it'll honor these folks, the Hispanic youth, Hispanic family, Hispanic man, Hispanic woman of the year. All their bios, everything are on the website right now, Madison365.org. You can see that right now. No need to me to go into it too far. So that's all I have for you today. That's the news at Madison365.org. Next week is the 2021 Black Power List. So watch for that in your inbox. We'll have 48 of the state's most influential Black leaders in every sector: government, business, education, nonprofits, everything from all across the state. And that'll be in 5 parts. So every morning next week, you get a new list of folks that you should know. And then we'll be into Christmas holidays, and we'll have some best of and all that stuff. So, but I'll be here every day for you, keeping you up to date on the COVID situation at the very least. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourself. Get your vaccine if you haven't done it yet. Get your kids vaccinated if you haven't yet, as they can. And get your boosters, get all that taken care of so you can just kind of take a breath and relax and enjoy the holidays. Until I'll be back Monday, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great weekend.
This is 365 Media.